You know, in qualitative research, we study problems where we really don't know what the questions are or even the variables to measure. We're going to ask very general questions of people. We're going to study a small number of participants, come up with the database that we then code and come up with themes. We're really exploring, we end up developing a complex picture. And participant respect and coming up with accurate, valid account, and also reflexivity, bringing ourselves into the project is very much qualitative research. Quantitative research, we start with a problem. We're very interested in a sample, especially a random sample of participants from a population. We ask questions or hypotheses. We then gather data and come up with some measures and scores on those instruments. We analyze those scores and then report results. And I think the key concepts of being objective, being ethical, being valid, generalizing is really an important part of quantitative research. So having both quantitative and qualitative skills is very important. Another thing is to start your reading on mixed methods. And you can find journal articles. There's thousands and thousands in the English-speaking journals and also in Asian journals of articles that use mixed methods research. There's something like 30 to 35, and they keep expanding, books on mixed methods research. Now, these books on mixed methods research have a different orientation. Right over here, Donna Merton's book, for example, is a very good book on bringing about change in the community. This is a book in the health sciences. Down here on the left, this Foundations is more of a broad philosophical book, as this one is here too. And this is a health science book. So you need to know the orientation of the author. I tend to write
Everybody, we're facing the same technical glitch, and I would like to remind you that one of the upcoming webinars is going to be on November 10th, 2021, and the topic will be about the global opportunity of addressing rising temperatures. And the second one is going to be on the 16th of November 2021. And the topic will be about heat stress and adaptation possibilities for humans in cities. And last but not least is on the 22nd of November 2021, and the topics will be about SDG 7, Universal Access to Modern Clean Energy. So I believe Professor Creswell is back?
Yeah.
All right.
I apologize. I don't know what's happened here, but I appreciate all of your patience. So I was going through these various books. I think another thing is to become familiar with the language of mixed methods research. And I've underlined some key terms here. I think knowing a definition of mixed methods is helpful. Knowing about the different forms of data, both quantitative and qualitative, the designs, diagrams, integrations, joint display, meta-inferences. These are some of the key terms that if you're not familiar with these terms, these are the ones I would encourage. And also having support for doing mixed methods research, institutional, time, your discipline, colleagues, publication possibilities. These are all good factors. So that was step one, really, is mixed methods suitable for you? Now the second one is I would talk to you about what is your worldview. And I realized that, especially as I work with Asian countries, worldview is not something that's thought about, talked about in terms of research methods. But it's very important, I think, to reflect on the worldview that you as a researcher are bringing to research. You know, what are your beliefs and assumptions that guide your approach to research? And I think one way to think about this is very practical and useful is I'm going to go back to an old book by Thomas Kuhn on the nature of scientific revolutions. And he really talks about the paradigm, that's the word he uses, or the worldview, and how it's formed. And so I think that the worldview that you bring to your research is based upon the training you have and the field of study or your discipline that you have. You know, psychologists tend to think differently about research than social workers. Educators may think differently about research than people that are in geography or architecture. And so Kuhn was making the point that your worldview is shaped by your experiences, your field, and your training. And what this does is, right in here in the middle, it helps shape how you think about research in terms of important problems, methodologies, conclusions to draw, what publications, outlets, which then informs really some of your larger philosophical ideas, words such as epistemology, how we know something, and how do we know something is real, and the role of values, and the importance of different types of methodology procedures. Even how we write up a study is shaped, I think, by our worldview. And so you'll find in many mixed methods projects a section on the worldview or the paradigm of the researcher. And I think that's an important part to put into your project. So if you're in my office, I would now ask you, what is your worldview that informs?
Check. Ladies and gentlemen, we're facing the same technical glitch, and apparently on Slido.com we have had over 100 questions, and I'd like to inform you that one account can actually ask multiple questions, and later... Okay, and Professor Creswell is back. Thank you so much. I think you're still muted. I think you need to unmute, Professor.
Yes, I'm back. So there was an important article in 2016 by an American professor, Shannon Baker, and she wrote this article in the Journal of Mixed Methods Research discussing the 4 leading worldviews or paradigms that are being used in mixed methods right now. Certainly pragmatism is one that gets has a lot of interest in mixed methods, where the focus is on research questions and gathering multiple forms of data. Critical realism, the philosophy of both subjective personal viewpoints as well as an objective reality. The transformative emancipatory worldview, very important, wanting to involve people in their communities, wanting to get them involved in the research, helping to bring about change. So we see this worldview a lot in the world countries.
So once again, I would like to inform you that one registered account on Slido can actually ask multiple questions, and currently we have had over 100 questions, and later we're going to select, or the participant can also vote for the questions. So welcome back, Professor.
Yes, I'm back. So these are 4 leading worldviews that are being discussed, and I'm very curious about what worldviews are being used in Indonesia and in Japan and in Hawaii, and I think there are different cultural worldviews that inform how we do research. The third step is to come up with a mixed methods title. So I would have you draft a title to your project very early on. I see this as a very short title because mixed methods sits between quantitative and qualitative. Let's keep it neutral and not use quantitative or qualitative words. Qualitative words: explore, meaning, discover, generate. Quantitative words: relationship, predict, etc. Or you could include both quantitative and qualitative in the title. I have a little template that I use that I would share with you if you're in my office. I would say, okay, let's write a title.
Okay, I would like everybody to also mark your calendar for the upcoming webinar series, because as we informed you earlier that today's webinar is actually the 2nd out of 7 International Distinguished Scholar Webinar Series, World Class University Universitas Pendidikan Indonesia. And also we're still inviting more questions on slido.com. And we're going to inform you that currently we have over 1,000 viewers on YouTube and also around 5,000 participants joining the Zoom meetings, attending today's webinar. In addition to entering the code of #TopWebinar1, you can also scan the QR code that is now showing on your display and ask the questions to Professor Creswell. This is the YouTube channel that is live streaming today's webinar on TVUPI. You can also subscribe on the channel to get updated. And welcome back, Professor.
Yes, I was going through this title. This is a little template. Write about your topic, the participants, the site, and then end with mixed methods. And just to give an illustration, the topic might be challenges facing migrant workers in Indonesia, a mixed method study. So this is a very useful practical template for writing a title. Next, I would talk to you about whether the problem you're studying is best suited for mixed methods research. We need to understand why you're actually, why we need your study and what's important about it. And it can be drawn from a need from the literature, or for practice, or from policy. And I'd have you talk a little bit about why do we need your study? And would mixed methods, gathering both quantitative and qualitative, help you understand that need better than just quantitative or qualitative alone? The next thing I would talk to you about would be the research questions for your project. So let's draft some research questions. Since we're using both quantitative and qualitative and mixed methods, we need really 3 sets of questions: qualitative questions, quantitative questions, and mixed methods questions. So I would talk to you about your qualitative research questions. I'd actually have you write out what your question would be. These questions are often very open-ended and they explore using words like what or how, focused on a single phenomenon. Very general questions such as, describe how you learned mixed methods research. A very general open-ended question. Then I would have you write down your quantitative questions, which can either be questions or hypotheses, but the main focus is what variables are you interested in measuring? Independent, dependent variables? Are you using a theory? Example would be, does a high level of motivation lead to a positive feeling about mixed methods research? Can you pick out in that example the variables? Motivation as an independent variable influences the dependent variable of positive feelings. Now, we need to also begin thinking about a mixed methods question. Earlier I said we're going to bring the two databases together, and our mixed methods question really gets to the point of what do we hope to learn from integrating the two databases. And the best way to think about these questions would be to come up with your design and then to write your questions. But a convergent design, we're going to go into in just a minute, what extent do the quantitative and qualitative results converge, or what happens when we compare the two? So in my books, we have examples of mixed methods questions. Now, I realize that most research textbooks do not cover mixed methods questions. They also don't cover the integration of databases. But the basic idea here is, what are we trying to learn from integrating the two databases? For example, how do the ways of learning mixed methods research compare with the scores about positive feelings of it? In other words, we're bringing together the scores as well as perceptions about learning it. We're bringing the two together. That's the mixed methods question. And I put together a little table here which kind of reviews what we've been through: qualitative questions, quantitative, and mixed methods questions. When we had a task force in the U.S. National Institute of Health in 2011, that task force recommended strongly that we have 3 sets of questions in every mixed methods project. Okay, next. Step 6. List your quantitative and qualitative data. So if we're going to bring these two databases together, first we need to separate them to see exactly what we're collecting quantitatively and qualitatively. For example, to me, quantitative data, although people talk about it as numbers or scores, I like to think of it as more closed. You're collecting closed-ended data. If we have a question, mixed methods research, is it easy to understand? Or just as a statement, mixed methods research is easy to understand. We would have some response categories: strongly agree to strongly disagree. Closed-ended data means we ask a question and we give some response categories. Qualitative data, on the other hand, is more open-ended. Is mixed methods research easy to understand? And then we just listen to all the participants' responses to that. So, in a mixed method study, we have both quantitative and qualitative data, closed-ended and open-ended. And I put down some examples of types of data here, quantitative, and types of qualitative data. And in the qualitative area, the types of databases have grown considerably over recent years. You know, there's all kinds of data that we can collect in a research study. Web pages, attitudinal instruments, one-on-one interviews, observations, diaries, journals, telephone interviews, Twitter messages, focus groups, photographs, videotapes, even in the health sciences, biological data. What I do is I have you think through all of your databases. We might even actually put together a page like this that lists all your different types of data. But I want you to organize this into quantitative and qualitative. This is what we're doing at Michigan in our workshops. Separate the two databases so we can clearly see all of the quantitative and qualitative. And in fact, when you write your study, have a section on qualitative data and then have a section on quantitative data. And list the two, because we want to then bring the two together. Now, some forms of data are both quantitative and qualitative. I understand that. But basically, we need to see these two types of data so that then we can begin bringing them together. Step 6. Identify your type of mixed methods design. Now, a design means your set of procedures for conducting your research. When you go to my larger book and many books written on mixed methods, they talk about the different types of mixed methods designs. In the 1980s, we knew that people were using quantitative designs or procedures, like experiments, quasi-experiments, single subject design, survey design. We also knew that people were using designs in qualitative, ethnographies, grounded theories, case studies. So the mixed methods researchers soon began developing an understanding of the types of designs. And what happened then were many different typologies and many names of designs emerged and many types. So it became quite confusing for especially new researchers to mixed methods to decide on what their design was. So Plano Clark and I came up with two categories of designs. Core mixed methods designs. Every mixed methods project has one of these core designs. I'm going to go through in a minute. And then these designs are often put within frameworks or procedures, such as an experiment, multiple case study, a program evaluation, participatory study. We call these complex designs. Different terms are used other than complex. Advanced designs, embedded designs. My colleague Fetters at Michigan calls these scaffolding designs. But basically, we're taking our core designs and we're putting them into a more complex process or framework. And not all projects have that framework. First, core designs. And you may be familiar with these core designs and may have read about them. A convergent design. A convergent design I call a one-phase design. We're going to collect qualitative and quantitative data and merge the two databases and then make an interpretation. A slight variation on this is I call it a convergent design with data transformation. I'm seeing more and more of this in the health sciences, where you collect qualitative data and then you transform it into quantitative scores, and then you merge the two databases. So now you have a richer quantitative database because you've built some of the variables on people's perceptions gathered through qualitative data collection. So we're seeing more of this. An explanatory sequential design. an extremely popular design among graduate students. It starts quantitatively. I call this a two-phase design. It starts quantitatively, where we collect data and then analyze it. And then we look at those results, and we might have surprising, unusual results, outlier results. We follow up with qualitative data collection to explain those results in more detail and make an interpretation. A two-phase, quantitative followed by qualitative. And then the third core design is an exploratory sequential design. Now, this is different than that explanatory because now we're starting qualitatively in phase one. And we analyze the qualitative data, and then we build some type of a quantitative assessment or measure. I call this quantitative design phase, that is built upon what we learned qualitatively, and then we test out in phase three what we redesigned. So often our instruments, our measures, are not sensitive to a particular population or a sample that we want to look at. I'd say, for example, we can't just drop